Hi, and welcome everyone to tonight's live chat. It is the Saturday, I guess the weekend of Memorial Day weekend. So, for those of you that have that time off, congratulations. Hope you have a good weekend planned, or maybe just a relaxing one, or maybe time with the bees. Every weekend is good for that. It's a good time of the year for beekeepers. Just throwing together this live chat kind of last minute. Sorry, that's the way I do them quite often, but we've had a lot going on as usual. Can't keep up. And we did get a funny video out, though. Many people have commented on their shock or frustration, mostly laughter, 99.9% laughter. A few people who are a little bit sticks in the muds about what we did, but no bees were harmed in the making of that film. It's quite a bit of fun. The honey flow has been pretty good this year. I wouldn't say it's a bumper crop, but we have a little bit more left. I'm hoping that we will see a little bit more nectar in the next week or so. And this has been really odd. I was just talking to Bob Benny on the phone, and he was telling me how this is one of the latest flows that he has seen in his area. And I really see the same thing here. I mean, we still have some privet blooming. It's about halfway over, but typically it's long over by now, at least 10 to 14 days. So it's been an interesting year, but it seems like every year in beekeeping, it's an interesting year. So I hope you all are doing well. What's up, Laurel? Oh, yep, that looks great. Sorry, I was getting a message from the boss. So, yep, hope you all are doing good on your vacation. If you have any questions or answers, no one's commented over there. We have the comments turned off or anything. Usually somebody will say something, at least hurl an insult, tell me my sound's not working or I did something wrong. Okay, good deal. Oh, wait. What is that? Hang on one second. We're experiencing technical difficulties. I think YouTube might be glitching on us just a little bit, and I can't see anyone's comments right now. All right, see, it's giving me two options right here. What is that? Ah, there we go. Laurel fixed it. Laurel's like, of course. Well, someone's got to. All right, so hey, Justin, John, the Happy Camper, Particle 7, Paul, Terry, and Chris. Welcome to tonight's chat. So hello, I'm a first-year beekeeper. Do you use high fructose corn syrup 55 to feed your bees? The Happy Camper, I actually have never personally used it straight. Now, when you buy Pro Sweet, there is a little bit of high fructose corn syrup in there. That's part of the blend. It's mostly sugar syrup, like as far as cane or beet-derived sucrose type syrup, but then it also has some high fructose corn syrup. And I think that's part of the reason it doesn't granulate really heavily like sucrose would. One of my good friends down towards Memphis gets his from Cargill down there, high fructose corn syrup 55, and he uses it. His bees do very well. He produces a lot of honey every year. I'm not the world's biggest fan of it. Again, I've never used it, but if it's cheap and it works for you, then do it. I'm not one of those guys that gets too hardcore about those things. The most important thing, in my opinion, is at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, your bees are happy and healthy. Hey guys, yeah, doing good. Aloha from the Big Island. All right, beautiful place. Do you know if anyone with a frame of capped brood for sale near us? I live in the same county as you. I don't really know anyone. That's not even nuke cells are starting to really diminish. As usually they do as we get close to June. But I would talk to the Cookville Beekeepers Club and the Livingston and a couple of the ones around, and maybe you can purchase one from them. And I honestly, if it's a good frame of brood, if you're looking for larvae, you can probably get it cheaper. But I think a good frame of capped brood will probably run you 18, $22, somewhere around there. Um, Now I could be wrong. Brian Reese, man, how are you doing? You're killing it in New Jersey. Well, awesome. The flow's going really good here. Those hives that we were in are looking really good, and even the ones that I was late on. I say we, myself and Laurel, that we were going through, that we requeened and did that work too. They're making some honey too. So that yard's doing really good. I expect that we'll probably do 4 drums, 5 drums out of that bee yard. So pretty happy. It's been a good year. If we can just get a little bit more of a push, it's going to be a really nice year. Really nice. So, and it might happen. We just got some rain finally. It had been almost 3 weeks since we had a good rain. But those nice sunny days were great for our bees to get out there and work until it just got really, really dry. 16 swarms so far this year from Caleb. And thanks again to Brian Reese, one of the guys that helps make all of our experimental yard and many other things possible. And also, he came out here one time and was able to stop by and help me do some bee stuff. So that was pretty crazy. And we were able to communicate, me with my weird accent and him with his Jersey accent. It was a lot of fun. Let's see here. Excited. Got my first swarm the other day. Well, that's great. Central Missouri, Maryland, Kansas. All right. Well, they're from all over the place. Let's see here. In Tennessee, do you need to top ventilate your hives? Mine tend to beard a lot. Mine are bearding quite a bit too. It's getting really warm and humid. Thankfully, it's pretty cool today, but the bees aren't able to fly. It's so darn cool. It's like 56 degrees, 57 degrees out there right now. But this moisture is going to get into the ground, and I really think if we get some sunny days, it's going to bring in some nectar. So for those of you in Tennessee and the nearby areas, you better make sure you have a little room on those hives because there's still some flow left to go. But definitely top ventilate if you're having a lot of bearding problems. I think summer stress is a real thing down in the South. I think it affects our bees more than we realize. I don't know to the extent, but I've got to believe that as the bees are fanning every day and hauling just tons of water, trying to cool the hive down, that's got to be stressful. It's nutritional stress because if we have a dearth period in summer, which we do, and then on top of that, the bees are working all day, cooling the hive and hauling water, that is a lot of work. And if we can alleviate that by even 10%, that's less bee bread and honey being consumed. That's going to go into the fall flow, and hopefully they'll be able to do more. So I think trying to help the bees with that summer stress is really important. And I'm looking into ways to do that around here a little bit better. Thanks for addressing my question. Does the high fructose corn syrup go bad? I'm thinking about buying in bulk. It does. All syrups go bad. Ian Stepler, a fellow, he released a study done up there in Canada on syrup degradation. And it was really amazing to see how quickly syrup goes downhill. It can still be used. Now in the South, we can get away with a lot more because our bees get cleansing flights. Up north, it is a big problem. And you don't want to be feeding really old syrup to your bees, especially if they're not getting constant cleansing flights. So I personally don't like to have more syrup than what I can use in a year-ish period. And I don't even have hard winters, but I think keeping it fresh is important. So that's just my opinion. And high fructose corn syrup is known for not lasting as long as sucrose. So keep that in mind. And don't store it in a hot location. That's really rough on it. What does a huge queen bee mean, if anything? It means that she has got some swagger, David Martin. No, a big queen is typically good. There's some debate about this. In my opinion, big queens are really healthy. If they have a bigger spermatheca, which holds the drone sperm for her entire life, there's a chance that she might even be able to lay more proficiently for a longer period of time. So bigger queens are perceived as being better. They can be big and still be poor if they didn't get mated properly or something else. But I like to see nice big queens in our mating nukes. And we're going to have some videos coming up on that. We've got them going. I've probably got like 7 videos that I just have not uploaded yet. Tomorrow's video is going to be a follow-up on the long Langstroth hive. And then I've got exciting news on a couple other things that will be coming up soon. But a lot of videos I need to get up, and queen rearing's one of them. 2-day queen cells. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, sorry, John. I heard about that bear causing you problems up there. Bears really drive me nuts. Hey, Norm. Well, I didn't have a live chat going when I was talking to you. I didn't. Let's see. Kamon, what about Pro Suite? Does it last, and is it better than 2-to-1 for winter buildup? All right, Ralph. So Pro Suite is a good product. I have used it, and I think if what you're having to pay for already is a similar price, I like the syrup for multiple reasons. Now, if you have to pay a lot more, then I would prefer mixing it myself, which is what I did for a long time. But the nice thing about syrup is, one, that it stores very good. Doesn't mean it stores indefinitely. It kind of will, but honey also degrades over long periods of time. The difference is it degrades, but it doesn't hurt us as far as, if there gets to be HMF in it or whatever, which honey can get, it doesn't bother our digestive systems. Old honey is really not that great for bees, really old honey. And syrup's no different. Syrup just degrades faster. But the Pro Suite, I like that it'll store for a long period of time. It makes really nice pollen patties. Any of the thick syrups do. If you got that, they're about like 3.5 to 1 almost in thickness. So they're way thicker than your 2-to-1. However, if you're trying to put on weight, I still prefer to dilute it down these days for multiple reasons. First of all, the system I have for feeding with that trash pump, I can't feed thick syrup out of it. So it's really inconvenient for me to have to put thick syrup. Bees also don't like it as much. If you're in the middle of a dearth and you stick out some Pro Suite or you stick out some diluted Pro Suite around 1-to-1, they'll almost completely ignore the thick stuff. They pretty much will ignore it completely. Bees want something that's more similar to nectar. So that all being said, 2-to-1, I believe, is better for going into winter. Also, because the bees have an opportunity to work their magic on it and make that syrup better than what it is through their inversion process. So I really like diluting it either way. But the Pro Suite is a good product. I think it is a little pricey if you can't buy a lot at a time. All right, let's see here. In your opinion, are the wax or plastic foundations better? I have all wax, but I'm told I should get the black. So I like black plastic foundation, but I've used waxed a lot too in the past. Just the solid wax. They both work really well. I've done a lot of foundationless too. I've done as many as 1,000 foundationless frames. I did it in 1 year. I don't know what I was thinking that year, but I mean, and it worked okay, but it was just a mess, so much work. But between the plastic foundations and the wax, there's just so much labor involved with wiring in the wax foundations. Doesn't mean that they're bad, but if the bees decide that they're not going to work them, they will chew holes in the wax foundation. And if they happen to mess it up a little bit, or you don't wire it in good and the wax gets warm, it'll bow a little bit. And then you'll end up with too much space in between your foundations, and they might build a little funky. And with plastic foundation, worst case scenario, you have to scrape off the funkiness or the bad comb, and then you have to put a little wax where they chipped away maybe any of the wax off the plastic, and it's down to bare plastic. And then now that it's waxed again, you can reuse it. That's one of the things I like about it. But it's not perfect either. So both will work just fine. It really comes down to personal preference. I use plastic primarily because I cannot spend all winter long putting in thousands of wax foundations. We just don't have the time. Teddy Sweet, can I make a split in June and July? Well, I know that I can. I don't know where you live, Teddy, and I'm not sure if you should or not, but a lot depends on the condition of the bees and the conditions of your season. Maybe you can get me with that here in a second. Caught a low valley swarm with laying workers. Well, a lot of swarms don't work out. I caught two this year in a nearby town, and they were just really close to where I already kind of go through anyways. I almost said no to both of them, but I went ahead and grabbed them. And the first one I went to was a cluster about the size of a cantaloupe, but the queen was good. And, they're building up. They're doing pretty good. I could have, in the same amount of time, I could have gone to one of my big hives and split it down the middle and had more bees already, or focused on queen rearing. The second one I went and grabbed, I was in that town, and they never came back with the queen, and it wasn't that big either. It was an after swarm. It was probably about 3 frames of bees. Big waste of time. We ended up shaking the bees out and combining them with something else, but um, not all swarms are created equal for sure. Some swarms will supersede the queen as soon as they'll let her lay for a little bit, and they're like, "Well, this queen's a little old." I've seen several of my colonies start superseding this time of the year. I see a lot of supersedure between now and mid July, and it just the queens have really put in so much work to get this huge population for this honey production, and they have some of them are just running out of gas. Not all of them, but I do start seeing some of that now, and it's all right. That's what I want to see. I want to see the bees supersede and do a good job of it. So what was you all's opinions on the exploding beehive video? That's definitely not something I plan on making a habit of. I really needed some help. We were in a bind to get some work done, and my friend Dustin, who I've known for many years, said he could come out and help. And he's helped me with a lot of other business venture things that I do. And really hardworking guy, a little weird, but he's from Kentucky. And no, seriously, he brought some tannerite and said, "Hey, why don't we do something with this for your videos?" And I'm thinking, we've worked like 28 hours in 2 days. It was a pretty busy 2 days, and I was like, let's just throw something together. We made that video in just a couple takes, and it worked out all right. It was pretty goofy. I like having a bunch of fun. But yeah, we promise that we won't do anything. As far as like legitimately, this is a mite treatment. You definitely won't see us throwing moonshine in beehives for mite control. I don't think it's that easy, unfortunately. Oh man. All right, Greg Burns. All right, a lot of people on here tonight. Are you going into moonshine production? No, I find that honey is better for my health and is has less restrictions. So we went the honey route, John. Who sells and ships nice temperamented queens? Quality. Hard to find quality. We just don't have the time. I really wanted to sell a lot more queens this year, and I just don't have the time to be able to do it. I wish I could provide more, but I really don't have any good recommendations. It's really hard. The few experiences I've had in the recent years have not been good. How's the Premier Foundation working for you? Mine are building it out nice. Mine are drawing it out great. I have probably drawn 600 sheets of Premier Foundation so far, and I haven't seen any issues with it at all. The extra wax is definitely really beneficial. I think that's the key component to any foundation is a good wax coat, and Premier really puts it on heavy. The other thing is that I think the bees do like the cell, not the size of the inner size of the cell, but the outline, the imprint of the hexagon, because it is thinner. And if you look at bees building natural comb, they do make it thinner than a lot of the plastic foundations out there. So it's the closest one that I'm aware of. So I think that's also helpful, that it's not encouraging to make it thicker. But one of my questions was with it, will the queens lay in it good? Because it is 3 millimeters smaller than right cell. And I haven't noticed a difference. They draw it out, the queens go right to it and lay it up. So that's cool. It's a 4.92 millimeters. Premier is. And now my only question with it is, how will it do an extraction? So I have, not in the experimental yard, but some of the extra Premier that was sent to me, I have put it on honey production hives, and we will be extracting with it. And I'm going to run at a pretty good speed, a little faster than I normally would, and just see how it hangs in there. That's the last question I have for it. But yeah, I've been really pleased with what I've seen out of the Premier this year. What do you think about the new study on varroa killing fungus scientists are working on? I've actually reached out to the university, and I'm hoping that they're going to be willing to get back with me, and I would love to have them answer some questions that we all have, maybe in a setting like this. And I don't know if they're willing to do that or not, but I'm trying to get them to do a video, because I have a lot of questions, but there's a lot more hurdles still to go through, I am confident. But the fact that they've gotten it this far is a nice hurdle that they've already jumped over, I should say. And yeah, I'm all for it. We need to learn more. The question is this something that is sustainable in a hive? Like, let's say it came in a spray bottle form or something like that, and it was approved for usage. If you spray that into the hive, is it going to be something that can sustain itself? And so you have a bit of fungus in there for a while, or when it runs out of food, does it die over time? And that's the question. Obviously, I would think that it probably wouldn't set up shop in there, because it needs a constant food source, and something like that might run its course really fast and then wipe out its food supply. But that's fine. Maybe you could reapply it. But then how fast does it do that? Is it going to only last 3 days? You got to do several. I'm excited. I hope it works. I don't know. That's why I really want to talk to these people. But the fact that they're looking into something like that is exciting, because I want to see some more change in that regard. This is like juice, by the way. This is not any type of moonshine, and this is not any of Ian's wine that he has on his stuff. So this is juice, just in case my mother's watching. Do I need to do anything special for my first swarm? I recommend that you just like one of the videos that we had, you put them on foundation, in my opinion, and then you just feed them really good. And you can put them on combs as well, and they'll build up just fine. But I like getting them to draw new foundations. How do you get cell finishers not to build comb over the cells? Well, we try to put a foundation frame in each one of our cell builders, or two, and put them at the edge. And so that if they're wanting to draw comb, it's really hard when there's a good honey flow going on. It's hard to keep them from putting a little bit of that comb, webbed comb over those cells. But if you put some foundations in there, a lot of times if they'll start drawing those, that they'll definitely avoid your cells over those new foundations. Hey, Mark, from Nova Scotia. Thanks for watching our videos. And yeah, Ian is a pretty cool guy, and I'm glad that it's helped you out a little bit, and I hope you have a lot of success up there. There's I have never been up to that part of the world, but in my area, there's a pretty decent amount of beekeepers. But uh, that's a nice thing about the internet, is even though many of us are very far, some of you are in a different country, we can still communicate and network. And I can't tell you how many different things I've learned through this. So that's really cool. Oski Powers. I emailed them a couple years ago about the bee shroom stuff. Hope they holler at us soon. I hope so. I really would like to hear more. This sounds a little bit more promising to me than the previous stuff. But there's been a lot of things come and go in the last 18 years I've been in beekeeping. That's why the experimental yard, we're starting out with the formic, the thymol, and the oxalic acid. I feel like those are kind of the natural treatments, the kind of the nuts and bolts tools that we have to work with and see what numbers we get. I know the University of Gulf has, or one of those universities up in there have done tests on these products, but that was in Canada. And I need to see what it's going to do in a more hot and humid summer, and also in a longer season that produces more mites. Kind of get a blueprint for what to expect with these natural products, at least in this region, and then go from there as we build the experimental yard and dial it in. This is going to take a couple years, but I'm excited. How do you keep bees from plugging up the brood box with honey? What makes some hives do it more than others? Does it need to be removed, or will the bees remove it to make room for eggs? All right, this is complicated, and there's not an easy answer. The best thing that I know how to do to keep hives from plugging up the brood nest is, one, to never let it start. Profound, right? Sorry. But seriously, like if I go into my honey production hives, we have got to keep them. If we don't have the combs, then we've got to get them drawing combs fast. And that can be a little bit tricky. And some years it's very tricky. If you have kind of a slow nectar start to your nectar flow and it kind of builds, then you can start them on that foundation, pull up that, and get those bees drawn that foundation. And then as a flow increases, they should have already built some comb and they'll just keep building it. However, flows vary from year to year. And some years, even the nucleus colonies can get plugged up. That's one of the reasons why I produce my nukes and queens in my worst honey production areas, because I don't want them plugging up. But once they get plugged up, it's a little difficult to clear them, because one, if you put foundations, typically they don't have a lot of brood, and that doesn't mean they have a lot of bees on the way. And that probably means they're not going to draw a lot of foundation. That's why drawn comb is king. I've got a couple colonies that swarmed, and as the queen finally made her way back, the new queen from one of the cells, and then she started laying, that brood area is all plugged up, because when the queen's laying hard, that's why the single brood management works. When the queen's laying hard and she's below that excluder, those bees are constantly bringing in the nectar, and they'll put a little bit down in there in the first day, but then overnight they'll push it up and they'll get that out of the way. And they'll even put some of the pollen above the excluder as well, just to keep that queen in laying room. And that's what we have right now, is just tons of colonies. I'm really excited with their honey flow, and they're putting just supers of honey and nectar up top and keeping that room clean below. So having a good queen is one of the best things you can have for preventing this. But what about the colonies that we let swarm? They plug that bottom box up because they didn't feel that need to clear that brood nest anymore. So we come back to those, whenever we see a colony is swarmed, we mark the date on them. Colony swarmed, and we kind of, give an estimate when that queen should be laying by. So if we're like, this one swarmed 2 days ago, and the queen, there's a virgin running around there, or the cell's still capped, then we're going to write an estimated come back 21 days later and check it. And when we come back and check it, if there's a laying queen, now we have drawn combs, because I have a little extra, and we're plugging those in there in that brood nest, because she'll be in there laying, but she won't have any space. A lot of times they won't get it all out of the way. Plus the population is a lot lower, less bee power. So drawn comb is really king to preventing that. And, it's really hard when you don't have drawn comb and you have plugged colonies. And I wish I had better tips than that. You can shake the bees out. Let's say you have a single brood nest and it's plugged out, and you got a new queen coming back and they're really trying. Take the frames of brood, shake all the bees out on the foundation, a few frames of brood that they do have, foundation on the rest. If there's no flow, give them some feed, get them to draw out those new combs. But now all those other combs you have to put in the freezer or on a different hive. So, anyways, that's really all I've got for you. Ooh. Let's see. What humidity level is recommended for incubating queen cells? Well, honestly, I've always I don't really dial mine in as much as some people. I just put my incubator at 93 degrees, and then I'll take just like a sponge, like you would use in your sink, and then just fill it with water. Maybe just give it a tiny squeeze to get the excess from dripping out, and then drop that in there. And then I want a fan in there to help circulate the heat and make sure it's even. And then that works really good for me. Some people dial in the humidity a little bit more. Should you add beeswax to foundation frames that are sold as wax foundation frames? Okay, so that's a question that I would say yes and no to. So first and foremost, if you have a great flow going on, I find even the thin foundations, as far as thin wax layered foundations, do really well. I've got a ton of, Man Lake Right Cell Foundation, very thin wax coated, probably a third of as thick as what I have with the Premier, but the bees are still drawing it. Are they drawing it as fast? I don't think so. But as long as there is a good flow and the colony is growing and wanting to expand, they still draw those very good. However, if we're in a period where there's not a good flow and the colony is young and doesn't have a lot of bee power, that's where I think having that extra wax really shines. So maybe. And if it's an old foundation, let's say you've had these foundations for a year and a half, 2 years, it can dry out a little bit, and the bees don't like that very much. So adding a fresh coat helps, but it all depends. I've got a lot of extra wax around here, so if we get time in the winter to do that, we like to dip old foundations or ones we think are a little bit thin. And add that little bit of extra wax. But I'm not one of those guys that likes to put it deep down into the cells and just get tons and tons of crazy amounts of wax. I think it's not necessary. All right, Kamon, I'm 20 years old. What beekeeping hustler will generate what beekeeping, or I guess certain type of beekeeping genre, nukes, honey, will generate the most income? Queen rearing. I'm going to have to say nukes. It's more consistent than honey production, and queens are pretty intensive, especially if it's just you. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but whatever you do, you need to know your area. You can do really well with honey, but one, you've got to be able to move honey at premium prices, and you have to be able to produce a consistent, good supply of honey. Some areas are hit and miss, and even the best areas have great years and have really poor years. Last year was a crazy poor year. This year, some of my bee yards, I believe, are going to average over 100 pounds a hive. And last year, it was nothing like that. So honey is a little more dependent. And in years where even last year where the honey flow was pretty rough, we were still able to sell nukes. We did have to postpone them a week, though, because of the rainy, cool weather. So I would say nukes first. And honey and queens would kind of be tied for second. As far as like beeswax and a lot of that side stuff, a lot of it depends. If you're in an area that's like Nashville, Chicago, big cities, you can charge a crazy amount for honey and lip balms and propolis stuff and pollen. That's one of our upcoming videos, actually, is on us collecting pollen for queen rearing and other things. And so a lot depends on what's close to you and what your area can produce. But I would say nukes would be number one. I definitely would. But in order to do any of these things, you have to have really healthy and thriving bees. Okay. Let's see here. Whoops. I was wondering what was going on. Is there a cure for chronic bee paralysis virus? Not that I'm aware of. As far as I know, there is no known cure to any of the viruses. I'm not even sure there's any type of treatment legal for the viruses in the United States. Hey, Randy, we got the Dirt Rooster on today. All right, he made it in. So, how's it down there, way in the deep south? You having fun? I know that your wife was threatening to change the color of your house, and you were wanting us to all to come down there and help you paint it. Yeah, money's really in the bees. The honey is really kind of, I think it's our number three in sales. And this year we didn't focus as much on honey because last year was so poor, and we focused a little bit too much on honey last year, and it didn't do good. So it kind of cost us a little bit. This year the honey flow is doing great, and we didn't focus on it as much. Yeah, we're hoping to have Randy up again in January. He's pretty fun, He's all right. He picks on me a little bit, but that's all right. I pick on him. He's threatening to bring up Mr. Ed with him, and that's where I'm just like, "Whoa, we can only take so much craziness in one room." And I just don't know if the building will be able to handle that kind of thing. Everything is great. House color is changing. Oh my goodness, Randy, I'm so sorry. That's a lot of work. You're probably gonna get somebody else to do it if I know you, though. That's the way I do it too. All right, so I missed a question up here. I was gonna get a couple questions. Seeing swarm cups. There's a question by Vanessa. On the bottom of frames and deeps, I keep destroying them and never anything inside them. Can this just be practice cups, or does this mean they are wanting to swarm? Been checking weekly. Well, that's really good of you being diligent and all that, but it is very, very normal, especially this time of the year. Strong colonies can have 24, sometimes 30 or so of those cups, and they can be all over the place. And sometimes they'll even have a little bit of what looks like could be jelly, but sometimes it's nectar down in there. So if it's not really creamy, looking like milk or cream, it's typically just a spot of nectar. But yes, keep an eye on those. But yes, it's very normal to have a bunch of cups in the colony that are dry. So Filament Corner, I got in touch with the Formic Pro team and found out from them that the 14-day 2-strip treatment penetrates the brood. The 20-day treatment is more of a phoretic or dispersal phase mite control. And that is exactly what I heard. I reached out when we were doing this experimental yard, and I talked to Tom Nolan there at Nod that produces Formic Pro and Mite Away Quick Strips. And that's exactly what they told me as well, is the problem with the people doing the half dosage is, yes, maybe that gives you somewhat of it is a little more gentler on the bees. However, it's also a lot more gentle on the mites and doesn't do as good of a job penetrating into the brood cells and killing those mites. I'm anxious to see what results that we get. We plan to use the full dose. I have no intention of doing the half dose, and we are going to see what happens. And part of using Formic is, and I think thymol too, not as much as Formic, but whenever you use these products that are really strong smelling, very strong smelling, you're disrupting so many pheromones. And any queens that are kind of old and maybe on their way out, this just is the straw that broke the camel's back. So I fully plan to have some of our queens and mating nukes ready to go. So if we do 13 colonies with formic acid in the test group, which that's the plan, if 3 or 4 of them end up superseding because of it and the queens don't come back, then we will have some queens ready to go to plug in. And that might just be part of formic acid mite treating. And just part of the protocol is to kind of plan for that. However, the main thing is we want to kill those mites and keep those bees healthy. And young queens is great. Clayton, oxalic acid, according to the EPA, is rated for honey supers, but is not yet legal to use because the label, it has not been changed, and there's a few other odds and ends that have to be done. So right now it is not legal to use oxalic acid vapor with honey supers on. It's also not very effective with honey supers on either, just because there's more space for it to go and bees are brooding like crazy. However, there is a good chance that if apabioxol does pick up the label, that it will be legal to do so. I don't plan on using it for that, just because I don't think it'll be worth the time of treating during that period. All right. Where are we at? B math, 21 plus 24 equals 45. Okay. I always thought B math was like you start off with one hive and then you're like, I've got to get two more, and then it's 5, and then it's 20, and then it just keeps getting worse. Like this is the last time, dear. These are the last hives. I remember when Laurel and I got married, she's like, how many hives do you think you're going to end up with? I'm like 30. I assume maybe 30, 25, something like that. Yep. Add a 0 or 2. At least 1 0. How do you keep records of all of your hives? How do you remember what each individual hive needs the next time you visit your bee yard? Roll Tide. All right. So we have an Alabama fan here. Fantastic. We got a couple of them. So that is something that we have been evolving over the last few years. We started with just taking a lumber crayon and writing on the lids. But the problem is it fades, or sometimes it doesn't fade good enough. And then you're like, is this the last message I left? So we started rotating colors of crayons, which helped a little bit. Then we started putting tape on the lids, but you have to have good tape, and then having a paint pen and writing on the tape. And that does better. So right now that's what we're doing. If we have a colony that has a lot of details or whatever, like supersede your cell, this date, don't check until this date, and or maybe something more specific, signs of deformed wing virus, requeen, cause brood break, treat a hive, whatever. So there's that. We are starting to number our hives, 1 through whatever the bee yard has. So a yard with 30 colonies, 1 through 30. And we are actually working on printing up. Laurel and I have been working on this year. We are using a sheet that has, I'll try to show it to you all before too long. We're actually going to try to make it available to people as well. That is like a checklist. And we really don't use it on the colonies that are great. Maybe just put a check mark on the top of the lid. But the ones that really need attention or have breeding potential, we need to have easier ways to record keep. So we're working on that. But right now, a lot of times we're just putting a piece of tape and writing on that piece of tape on the lid. And that works pretty good. I can sneak Mr. Ed in the suitcase. He'd probably come out smiling too. He seems like he takes life grinning. Vanessa, yeah, you've been taking off heavy supers every week, checking. Yeah. So that's the main reason a lot of people like looking into other styles of hive, because that is when you produce a lot of honey and you have powerful colonies and you're doing the right thing by keeping on top of it. They may, just keep them in a room and they should be pretty good. But, that is one of the problems with the Langstroth system or any hive like that, is you get all that honey up top and it's a lot of work. Work your back out. For sure. But that lifter, that's the nice thing about that lifter, is you can go and grab it and pick them up. And I'm liking that about the lift. Of course, they're not very cheap either. Yeah, stick Mr. Ed on in the trunk. But you'll definitely need to get a bigger vehicle this time, Randy. I tell you, they really have shortchanged you on that last one. I was like, that's my size. Let's see. Is there any way of testing old wax combs for pathogens? I'm sure there are some places that you can send it to. I don't know of one right off the top of my head, though. Does anybody here know a place where you can send combs for testing? And I'm sure there's going to be a fee. If not, somebody needs to make it available. But I know some places that do that, but I don't think they do it as far as like you send it in and then you pay them. I think they just do testing for their own research. Let's see here. I missed something. Hey, I still only have 30 hives. Exactly. I just got those nuke boxes. I don't know if I told you, Kevin, but those nuke boxes that you and your wife brought, they're all wax dipped now. I've got them all wax dipped, and they're looking really good with that wax dipping. Appreciate you guys helping me throw those together, those handles and everything down here, and drill the holes. Yep, roll tide roll. Can't wait for football season. All that stuff. Queen excluder or a small escape box for Formic. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, Corey, but what Tom Nolan told me to do with using the Formic, and this is what I'm planning to do, makes a lot of sense, is one, leave the entrance open. That formic acid is heavier than air, so it's going to go out the bottom. We don't want it to get too concentrated in there. So we want that formic acid to be able to go on out, but we also need it to be able to circulate good and get around everything. So he recommends if you have a double deep or a single or whatever you're using, there needs to be at least at least 8 to 10 frames of bees to treat with the full dosage. And best case scenario, that would be the best case to have at least that, and then to have double deeps, and then put even if it's just a box of foundations, or even just a box, if that's all you have, and then put the lid on top, and then put the treatment on top of the double deep, and let that formic circulate through the hive better. And that really helps, is what I've been told. So that's what I plan on doing, is putting on an extra super and then putting treatment on the colonies. Seems like more swarms are being mentioned this year, or is this just normal? It really depends on location. Last year, we didn't have a ton of swarms in my area, but the weather was pretty poor. And this year, the nectar has been pouring in really hard. So I think bees have backfilled a lot more, and that encourages more swarming. But it just depends on where you're at. I know some people who have been really struggling with too much rain this year, and we actually, until yesterday, were in a drought. So it really just depends on location. Let's see. Hey, Kamon, there's an app for iPhone called B Plus that lets you print a QR code for each hive and keep detailed inspection notes. It even gives you some chart data based on your entries. Huh. If it wasn't on a phone, I would totally be on board with that. I hate technology. And you're like, what are you talking about, Kamon? You're on YouTube. That doesn't mean I know how to use it. Have you guys watched me try to set this stuff up before? Everyone who came to the conference knows that Laurel runs all that. But seriously, I mean, some people are really good with that kind of stuff. So, and I don't have an iPhone either. But I would be cool to see something that was, well, you already commented saying how illiterate I am. Oh, I thought you were insulting me again. Oh, we don't do iPhones. Okay. Well, Laurel has spoken. I don't need to say anything else. But yeah, it would be nice to have something that was very user friendly on the phone. But the problem is usually they're too complicated for me. Or Laurel gets upset because I get nectar and bee glue and beeswax all over my phone. She just cleaned my phone for me and gave me the look of, don't let it get that dirty again. Yeah. Here in Canada, the Canadian Bee Research Lab will test the frames. Okay. That's good for Canada. Anyone in the U.S.? USDA lab, Baton Rouge, LA, another one in Poplarville, Mississippi. I'm not sure if they test wax. I got the cell phone on my mind. Text wax. Honeybee identification. All right. So hopefully that'll take care of it. I need to send some of my wax off and just to see what I get, especially on the young stuff. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. Like Laurel just made me get a new phone, like forced me to, because all of the apps on it, even the original text messaging app, it was only 8 years old. 8 years old is not that old. She's like, that's 130 years old in computer tech time. But okay, so what if it is? I like old-fashioned things. All right, back to bees. Yeah, I know, but see, Dawn, I can, but it's kind of like different types of things. Some things come easily and some don't, and the computers don't for two reasons: one, because they don't, and two, because I don't want them to. So it's kind of like when my mom tried to get me to learn how to play piano. I didn't want to, and I never did learn how to play piano. Hope my mom's not listening to this. Every 2 years, you need a new phone. Well, don't Laurel, don't listen to that guy, even if he is nice. No, I don't have a flip phone. She got me a Google Pixel. Is it a Pixel? I can't remember. I don't know. All right. So one of the things I was going to tell you all about the exploding hive video that so I had never shot tannerite before. And I felt like for what we invested into the tannerite, it was worth every penny. But I had never shot it before. I'd seen some videos, but this was a really small container. It was only about yay big. It was about this jar right here, maybe slightly bigger, not much. And we put it in that nuke. That nuke was only a year and a half old, but Dustin was like, well, just don't put the lid down, like staple it or anything. Screw everything else in, and all that pressure is just going to go through the top and it'll do minimal damage to your box. Well, what does he know? I'm telling you what, we got behind cover, and which is smart. And Laurel had the camera zoomed in and different things like that. And we always try to do safety first. I'm telling you what, there's pieces of that boxes all over the yard. It blew the front entrance like 130 feet away. And the lid, it's on my neighbor's property. So, yeah. And what we did, we put 3 old Kelly frames in there, but they were still good frames, and the 3 old frames of foundation. But all they needed was another coat of wax, and the bees would have used them. They were ones I think small hive beetles had gotten to and made a mess of. So we killed the larvae and scraped them off. But the box was nice, wax dipped and everything. And yeah, I mean, I put 3 frames in there. We put the tannerite in there, and then we put some sawdust and stuff in there to kind of give a little bit more fluff, and oh my goodness gracious, there's pieces of it everywhere. But hey, safety first till it comes to swarm season. Hey, when there's 8-pound swarms in those trees, man, I'm going to get on that Subaru. I've done a lot of stuff like that my entire life, and to me that doesn't feel really risky, but for bees, I've done some pretty crazy stuff. Have you ever used or tried those Russian Scion bee swarm traps? I have not made them necessarily specific to what I have seen on the pictures, but I have done something similar, which is basically just take a frame of old brood comb, and I will spritz it with a little bit of lemongrass. And when I say a little bit, we're talking like maybe a drop, 2 drops, and then maybe do that once every 10 days, 14 days, something like that. Hang it somewhere. I like to hang it, I don't know, about 15 feet up, and then you can have it on a rope. I don't have that at all of my bee yards because I'm not there hardly. I don't go visit them every day or even every 5 days. Some every now and then I'll do it that frequent, but that's only for like a couple weeks of the year. And here at home, though, I do. And yeah, they work really good. But the problem is they might only stay on there for a few hours. And so if you're not around or you happen to miss it. So during swarm season, you check those quite often. But some people, they'll make propolis, like they'll take canvas and they'll coat it in propolis and have that. Or they'll use, you can use all kinds of things. Basically, it's just a landing pad for them. But I think that it would be smart for everyone to have a Scion. in their bee yard. I'm not really a commercial beekeeper. I'm a small professional beekeeper. But how do I store my combs without the wax moss ruining them? I just keep them dry, keep them ventilated, and keep them out. I have had combs in my shed for over a year now, and I actually have some extra combs this year, which is awesome. But not many. But they've been sitting out there. They have no bee bread in them, no bee carcass leftovers, no nothing. They're just comb, and that is it. And then in a 10 frame box, we'll have no more than 8 combs in there. They'll be spaced out. Mice is my biggest concern. And we're warm. I mean, we can get wax moth damage in March, and we can get wax moth damage in November. So we have all between that too. So there's plenty of opportunities for wax moths, but as long as they're dry like that, I have no problems. Keep them spaced apart, keep them ventilated, and that works really good for me. Do I occasionally see a wax moth or two tunnel through there? 1 or 2, big deal. Bees will fix that. Now, if I was to take those same combs and put 10 frames to a box and close it up to where a wax moth could get in, but it was dark, they'd eat it to pieces. That works really good for me. And I've literally got, if you'd asked me if 5 weeks ago or so, I would have had thousands of combs in that situation with no treatment on them. But if you want to be a little more safe, there are some products out there that you can use to keep them a little bit more safe. There's Paramoth. Isn't there a BT that's approved now? I have not necessarily seen where you can buy that, but I think they have made that legal again. I think you can spray that in there. If you have bee bread in them, like for instance, if we extract deep frames, in which we will this year, quite a few, when we extract them, some of them have nothing but honey. Fantastic. But some of them have a good deal of bee bread. If there's like 10 or 12 cells, we'll store those. But if there's hundreds of cells with bee bread in them, then we are going to take that. And when we make our splits, that's one of the frames that's going to go in the split for 2 reasons. 1, we don't want it to get damaged by the wax moths. But 2, we want that bee bread to go to those new splits so they can use it for brood rearing. I don't have any Warre hives in the experimental yard. I actually have never owned a Warre hive. This horizontal hive I have is the most odd type hive that I've ever had. It's really not that odd. But I am pretty pleased. Tomorrow's video is going to have it in it, and it's going to be producing honey. I'm really excited at how it looks. Hey, Nuts and Bolts, I'm really glad to hear that your experience from Hilco is really good. I'm pleased with what I got from Hilco. Their joints are way tighter than what I purchased last time from Man Lake. They're not perfect, but I've never purchased from a company on boxes that was perfect, especially when you're buying hundreds of boxes. You're going to run into some that have some issues. But I look at the value of what I paid, and I feel like if I was buying the Hilco boxes, I feel like I got good value for my money. And that's why I one of the reasons I said that, we would do the experimental yard with them is we vetted some of these guys, and some guys we said no to because I saw what they were producing. I'm like, I don't want that on our experimental yard sponsorship because, people are going to buy it and they're going to be like, Kamon, what did you do? Oh, what was the mite count after the explosion? Well, it was really hard to get any sampling data, but right now, early preliminary testing is showing that it's about 100% kill, Robin. And I was really excited to see that. The problem is we haven't found a way to keep it down to where the bees can survive either. So dosage is everything. Let's see here. Yeah, I have no idea why your neighbor keeps calling the cops on you over the explosion. Around here, that's pretty normal. You should hear it around 4th of July. Lots of guns around here, lots of fireworks, lots of explosions. But I can't tell you the last time we had any accidents related to any of that kind of stuff around here. People are pretty smart with them. As long as you have a good mother, usually you're pretty good. I usually find that's like the common denominator of high levels of stupidity is not having a good mama. What? I thought that was pretty truthful. Oh, I haven't seen that one. Ah, okay. My 5-year-old daughter named Avery is a young beekeeper and a huge fan of yours. Could you please say hello to Avery? Well, I certainly can. Avery, hope you're having a good day and hope you keep keeping honeybees. They're really awesome and sweet, and I'm sure you are awesome and sweet as well. So thanks for watching any of our videos. All right. Are you going to play music tonight? No, I don't think so. I haven't played music since the last time, and I'm just so rusty. I have no calluses, and some of these fingers have been stung this week, and they're not really looking forward to doing anything like that. Oh, Don, you got some Hilco frames. All right. Well, um, I'm glad to hear that you had some good luck. And the nice thing is, you know, one of the things that a lot of these small producers face, and talking to a lot of these people has really opened my eyes. It's hard to compete because when these big companies like Man Lake and Data and all these guys, they can get big deals on shipping with FedEx and UPS and all these shipping companies because they do so much volume, and these little guys can't, and that's what really kills them. But in every other way, usually the quality's a lot better, and so it's frustrating. Um, the small producers that I feel like need to be giving competition to the big guys to really make it better for all of us. They have a hard road to plow, but the thing of it is, this is exactly the way that our society has been set up more and more. And for those of you, I'm not going to get into this very much, but you can see it in our economy, in our society with truck drivers. You get legislation making it more expensive and harder to run a truck driving business. And you know who's pushing this? The truck driving companies, the big ones, because they want to push out all the small companies that are chipping away and taking away from their business. And they all use the name of safety and better for everybody. But what it is creating monopolies. And then all of a sudden, we don't have many choices to go, and then our quality of life goes down because we only have a couple options. Break out the banjo. I don't play no banjo. My mama didn't raise me to be a banjo player. Free shipping is hard to beat. It is. Sweet home Alabama. Hey, I actually in Tennessee, that's the trick though. You have to be able to play Rocky Top. I can't tell you how many times I've been requested to play Rocky Top. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to play this redneck song one more time. I actually like the song Rocky Top. If I'm being honest. But as an Alabama fan, when we play Tennessee, we don't like that. Is there a general rule of thumb? How long after a hive swarms does the new queen in the original hive emerge? So there's not a general like this exact number. However, whenever they cap the swarm cells, typically they will leave shortly thereafter. There's some variables here, and I want to see more information on this. If anybody has more information on this, I want to see it. This is one of the questions that I've been meaning to ask a couple of my buddies and see if they know more than I do. They probably do. But one thing that I observe in swarming is you have a couple different things I think going on. First of all, you have your typical swarm that we perceive that they get the urge to swarm, they cap a bunch of queen cells, and then the old original queen mates that's mated takes off with them and takes 70% or so of the bees, 60, 80%, something of that. And then you have a bunch of cells that are left over. And then this is where more variables begin, is you have some that will emerge out, and you'll end up with one virgin after they all basically go all, you know, kill each other and everything. And then hopefully she'll go on a mating flight and come back. But then what about the times where they send secondary swarms? And this is what's really devastating. I hate losing a swarm. But when you lose a swarm and then they swarm again with the virgins, which they can and will do sometimes, then you're left with so little, because at least after the first swarm, you still have all that brood in there. And then it emerges out and you still have a nice sized hive. And then if you get a queen to come back, well, now you got a fresh queen with still a bunch of young bees in the middle of a honey flow, and you're good. But if they swarm again, then you have like hardly any brood, very little bees, and maybe the queen comes back a lot of times. It's the low chance of survival. I hate those. But that's not all of it. I have seen some where the queen is still laying. And like the queen doesn't stop laying at all. And she keeps going, but they're raising swarm cells. And then the virgins come out of the cells, kill the mated queen, and then take off in a large virgin swarm. And in some of those, goodness, I've counted as many as I think the biggest I've counted was like 12 virgins and one big ball of bees. I don't even think that's all the variables. That's just the ones that I kind of think that there are. But typically, to answer your question, I apologize, I'm bad about rambling, is that when they have a capped cell like that, typically they will swarm right after, within a couple of days. So there's variables there. But from when they cap it, usually there's about 6 more days. Let's see. So 3.5. Yeah. There's about 6 more days after they cap it, thereabouts. It's going to emerge out. So if you see a capped cell, just go ahead and give it those 6 days and then give it another 14. So I usually, if I see a capped swarm cell or something like that, and a supersedure, I usually give it 21 days to come back and see if there's a queen in there. What's your perspective on a 2-frame nuke to start a hive? You can. If the queen is good, it's a strong 2-frame nuke, get it out of that 2-frame nuke. And if you have a lot of flow ahead of you, then that's good. But the problem is if you have a dearth period, they're not good about drawing foundations during a dearth, especially if they're young and weak. If there's no good diverse pollens come in, they're not going to grow very good, even if you feed them pollen patties. I don't like little colonies. The only reason I ever have little colonies is for mating queens. But I still prefer 3-frame nukes for that because it gives me a little bit more. You can use 2 frames, don't get me wrong. But if that's all you have to start with, it's pretty small. They can work, but they take a long time. And the further away you get from the spring flows, the harder it's going to be. Let's see here. I want to hear Laurel giggle. She's working with the kids right now. They're high maintenance. You know how kids are, and they're my kids too. Man, they're getting particular about having more than 2 hives on your property. Well, I don't know if you have some countryside nearby, but you could see if you can get a farmer to let you put some bees on their property. How are the 2-day queen cells doing? All right, Jason. So I can't spoil this one, man, but we are working on that, and there should be videos upcoming on that very soon. So, but yes, we are doing that, and it's not finished either, so I can't give any conclusive evidence. But what we've got going on is I'm going to set up 10 mating nukes, actually 20 total, 10 for the 2-day cells and 10 for the regular cells, and just see what the percentage of coming back is on those. And I'm going to try to do a really good job making sure there are plenty of bees for the 2-day cells, because I feel like that's where you want to make sure there are plenty of bees to finish drawing out that cell. And it's also going to take longer. That's the biggest problem with the 2-day cell, I think, is the fact that you've tied up your mating nuke for even more days. If you plop in a ripe cell, The virgin might be emerging out within a day or two at the most. Goodness, I've dropped some in and she was emerging right then. You'd put a 2-day queen cell in, you have a lot more time to go. You've got, goodness gracious, got 8. You've got at least 10 days. And so that's tied up your mating nuke 10 more days. And that's why you don't see big operations rearing queens using this method. Doesn't mean it doesn't have merit, but it is a con to the 2 queen cell system. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I said I wasn't going to talk about all this. What have you done, Jason? Nah, it's all good. How close to your main honey flow will you do a split without risking the honey production? Well, these days, I'd rather risk some honey production than risk losing a swarm. We're focused more on selling the bees. So I hate losing swarms. You lose honey and you lose a lot of money's worth of bees. So I will do a split literally during the honey flow. Actually, especially during the honey flow. If I come to one right now, we still have a good little push to go. But if they're starting to swarm, I'm going to break them down. I'll lose some honey out of it, sure, but I don't want to lose bees. But I will pull from the honey production colonies at the start of the honey flow. I don't pull from them a lot, but I pull from them enough to keep them from swarming. Rather lose 20 pounds of honey than lose a nice swarm. Because there's more to it than just, okay, man, we lost that swarm. Some of them don't come back with the queen. And some of them will do a secondary swarm. Not all of them, but some of them will. And then there's all the work and extra maintenance. So we don't want that extra work, and we don't want to lose those bees. So that's why I'm very aggressive, more and more about if I want to produce this number of honey, then we need to have enough colonies to produce this much honey, because due to swarming or maybe poor weather, we want to still be able to meet this number and make sure our customers are satisfied. I just wanted to let everyone know I had a conversation with the Dirt Rooster, and he told me to do a rain dance, and I did one, and wham, you're welcome. The rain is here. Hey, I really appreciate that, Aaron. I really do. We were so dry. There were days where the bees were not working. I mean, like hardly at all, hardly any pollens, hardly any nectar. And it was, you just see the privet out there, and the bees weren't going out. They weren't working the white Dutch anymore, but there was dry spots where our grass was drying up. It had been that many weeks since we had rain. And then we had 2 days ago, just a little rain, like a 1/16 of an inch. And then the next day was nice and warm. And lo and behold, that's tomorrow's video, actually. You'll see it. And I was shaking nectar out of frames. And then yesterday we got a nice goalie washer. And then if we can get some nice sunny days, man, we might have a really nice honey flow year. Pretty excited. Roll Tide. All right. All right. Yeah, monopoly prices go up and quality goes down. Any thoughts on using former brood frames in honey supers? I have got some thoughts on that one. And it depends. If I've used treatments in those combs, then no. And it depends on the treatment. Let's say you use formic acid or oxalic acid in the past, last year, and that's not that big of a deal. But if I've used Apivar or used something, if you use something that could release residues, I definitely wouldn't want anything like that in my honey supers. And I don't really want old ones either. I'm talking about like lightly used brood frames that maybe have had a few rounds of brood through them. So they're pretty young and still, they're not black. They're yellowish brown combs. I'm okay with that. I've done cutouts and eaten honey out of some pretty dark combs, and it still tastes pretty good. It's not as good though. I really like keeping my combs pretty young, but when you're a new beekeeper and you don't have a lot of extra combs, and I consider myself still and just getting past that expansion stage, and like, why are you just now getting there? Because we've kept growing our business. And the more that we grow it, the more combs that we need. And we also sell nukes too. But yeah, use them a little bit. As long as they haven't had like some nasty treatments in them, or they're just really old, I would use them. Is your soapbox on a deep or a medium? Oh, no. My soapbox is probably on one of the the Data Extra Deeps, the old fashioned deeps that had the frames that are like that deep. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Some days my soapbox might even be one of those Leo Layens frames, and man, those are deep. Hey, thanks for all the compliments, everybody. I've seen several people saying some nice things. Yeah, we actually had a tornado almost touch down here. They said it touched down for a second, but I don't know if it did or not. But we got plenty of rain. Have you tried the bee scanning app? I have not, and I have my doubts that it works that good. But I've been wrong before. Just ask Laurel; she can print off the list. It's scanning digitally for mites. See, and I think that's where the problem with that bee is. The bulk majority of your mites aren't on where the device can see them. They're almost under the abdomen by and large. And so, but maybe there's still some algorithms that can pull from what it does see. Let me tell you, if I start seeing mites on bees, I don't need an app to tell me it's time to treat. If I start seeing mites on bees in the hive and I see especially more than one, okay, I'm like, it is time. Even with there's honey supers, get those honey supers off and drop the hammer. So tornado did hit Cookville yesterday then, huh? I heard some people said it touched down. Some people like, I don't know if it actually did or not. I heard nobody was hurt. That's the most important thing. Why should we requeen a hive besides having an old queen? At what time of the year is it best to requeen? I don't know where you live, Rodrigo, but what I find for myself is that June is a good time. Late May is good too, but I really like the queens that I raise for next year not to be too early in the spring because we don't want them to have to lay too hard in spring. We kind of let them build up in summer and give that first good push of theirs going into fall to build up that nice winter cluster. And then they should be still very fresh and ready to go to build up coming out of winter. And also, there's a lot of reasons why we do it. It's a percentage game for us, especially when you have a few hundred colonies. Then, queen issues are a big pain in the butt, let me tell you. Older queens are more readily, the hives want to swarm more. So we're discouraging swarming. We're also discouraging any queens that run out of gas in February or March, which does happen. And man, it drives me nuts. And a lot of times they're really nice colonies, and then they just get to a point the queens starts laying drones or they supersede. I'm getting, like I said, I'm getting some superseders going on in the last month, and these are almost always older queens that are not a year old. They're 2 or so years. And it's kind of inconvenient right now to deal with that because if they supersede during a week or so of really good nectar, they might plug that brood nest up. Fun times. But yeah, I like to raise queens in June for myself. It's a good time. All right, so Ed Friel visiting J and W apiaries down in Georgia, and he's one of our sponsors. He's the one that supplied the bees for the experimental yard. So he's been keeping pretty busy down there, sounds like, in Georgia, and looking forward to showing more of those bees in those experimental yard. Hey, thanks, All Cleaned. I don't think I've seen you on here before, but I really appreciate you coming on and being a part. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them, and thanks for helping our experimental yard. Let's see. Portugal. So started beekeeping this month. Yeah, I don't know what your weather and seasons are like in Portugal, but hopefully you can find somebody down there that can kind of give you an idea of what your seasons are really like. And for all I know, your seasons might be the total reverse opposite of mine. What is the recommendation if I suspect EFB in one of my yards? What I like to do and recommended a friend of mine to do recently, and he did, and I wish I could show you the pictures. It was a European foul brood hive. The brood patterns were just spotty as heck. And European foul brood also is in the honey and then in the nectar or in any stored sugar syrup, and it's in their guts, but it doesn't affect the adults. So you got to break that cycle. And if it truly is just European foul brood and there's a decent population of bees, then shake them out and make them draw out foundations. And when you do that, feed them, get them to draw those out, and the only spores left you have on those bees are in their gut, and they're going to consume those, and it gets destroyed in their digestive system. You do sacrifice the brood, you do sacrifice the honey. Stick those in your freezer, and then I usually, if you can keep them in there, just keep them in there for a while, and I will use them later. I don't know how long that sticks around in there, but I really think a lot of it is the colony getting susceptible with European foul brood. I've never used antibiotics. I do see a little European foul brood every now and then, just a touch of it creep in, usually during periods of stress. But I don't see big problems with it because we requeen colonies that do have problems with it. And it's been years since I've had to do this, but basically you just shake them out and you clean them up. And if that, and then you and requeen is always a good idea too. But this one, the queen was young and he still had these issues, and he did that. And the brood pattern afterward was fantastic. Just a gorgeous looking brood pattern. One thing you might want to do is if they're a little lacking on bees, shake some bees in with them from another colony. Don't give them brood or anything like that, but shake some extra bees at the entrance. They'll run in, and then you can kind of bolster that population and get them going. Let's see. So you're a Cuban guy living in the UK. Talk about brood factories and bee bombs. See, that's Michael Palmer's area of expertise. I really don't do what he does for a couple reasons. One, because we're a lot warmer than he is. And I prefer using a different method. I really like the double screen boards. We dipped our toe into the water trying those out 2 years ago. And I recommend you all do this too. I've done this with several things the last several years, and it always is good because sometimes you keep yourself from going down a path that you end up changing your mind about later. And then if you like it, then you can always get more. But with the double screen board, it's kind of like one of those things like, Snell Grove board. Do I really want to do that? I like those better because I can stick them in over another colony, and the heat from that bottom colony warms them up. I don't have to have multiple nukes, different equipment. I already have mediums and deeps, and that's plenty enough of different sizes for me. I like staying with deeps. So double screen boards, I feel like give you somewhat similar results to the Michael Palmer double nuke system that he has going. You're still utilizing the other colony's heat. You can overwinter with them. You can use them for those early spring days. That's really where they really shine for me, is those early spring days where you have those crazy days that only get up to like 48 degrees and drop down really cold. Colonies still build up. So I like those quite a bit. But, just if you want to learn more about the Michael Palmer bee bombs and brood factories, there's really nothing that I can add to his system other than what I just said, which I do things differently. But Michael Palmer is a great beekeeper. He's got some good information, especially if you're a northern beekeeper. I think he's an invaluable resource. I wish we could get him to get on YouTube a little bit more, but he doesn't really want to. However, he's supposed to be doing something with me in the future, but I'll let you figure that out when it happens. I'll give you all fair warning so everybody can be there. I won't spring it on you like this one. Let's see here. Hey, Happy Camper, thank you so much for coming on. I don't think I've seen you on here before either, but I appreciate the donation as well, and your comments and being part of the chat tonight. Hey, CR, you're very welcome. I was talking to Bob. I talked to him for like 50 minutes earlier, which was really cool. He doesn't think anything of it, but I'm a fan of Bob. I've always found that my favorite people are usually older than me because they know stuff. You talk to people that are your age or younger, and it's like, Of course, maybe one of these days I'll be the old guy, and so I can talk to other smart people that are my age, right? I don't know if it works that way or not, but anyways, I talked to Bob, and I was telling him like, Bob, thanks so much for being on YouTube. I know it's a lot of work, and I know technology is really not your favorite thing in the world. It's not mine either, but man, I'm just excited for the future of beekeepers. So much information available, and it's great. I can't say anything besides that. It's just really great. 2022 conference. Oh yeah, January 7th and 8th. We're working on it. I've got some people helping me now, and we are pushing towards getting it to where people can sign up and prepare for that. But it is January 7th and 8th. That is the date. We've got the place booked, got all the food people figured out, all that stuff. But we're going to pay somebody to do the automatic sign up, so we don't have to spend a lot of time doing it ourselves because we just don't have the time right now to do that. But yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be better than last year, and last year I thought was a lot of fun. Let's see. What do you do to build brood faster? Well, first of all, I make strong splits. Obviously, the more bees that they have, healthy young bees and combs that they have, the faster that the queen's going to be able to lay it up. That's one of the reasons why I don't really get the whole small hive movement. That I think that was by and large created by YouTube beekeepers. And it's not that it's all bad, but keeping hive, putting new queens in these little bitty like 2-frame splits and then expecting them to build up and do phenomenal is a lot to ask. And it may work in some places really good. When I think of that, I think of places that have really nice flows. There's certain places in Florida, Hawaii, and other places, long seasons, multiple types of flows that we don't have in Tennessee, and they especially don't have up north. And so those, when you have natural pollens for long periods, bees want to grow. Even if you had natural nectars coming in constantly, bees won't grow good off of that. They've got to have the bee bread, either the pollen and the bee bread. And you're very limited by the amount of pollen coming in. Here, like I've told many of you, by mid-June, late June, our diverse, healthy pollens really diminish, and we won't get them back again until late August, early September. And if we have a drought, then the quality is really low. So, I think that in order to build colonies fast, they need to have a good population size. And we also have to view our season for what it is. And I don't know what your season is, but for mine, this is how I view it. We have winter. Obviously, we're not doing a whole lot, but we do some. When the pollens start early February, the bees all of a sudden want to eat pollen patties when the pollen's not coming in, and they want to brood like crazy. I can feed pollen patties in early January, and you know what? They'll eat them a little bit, especially the big colonies, but I don't see a whole lot of difference. As soon as that maple pollen hits, that first pollen, they consume those pollen patties like crazy. And you know what? They brood like crazy. The real stuff is the ticket, and you can't duplicate that. The supplement that we feed them is just that. It's a supplement on those bad stretches where you might get a week where they can't get any pollen during February or early March. And so then that's what winter is. Basically, I just prep them for winter and maybe give them a little bit of pollen supplement towards spring. Then spring, it is the time when it is easy to make anything go right, if you have the tools to do it. It's easy to get queens to come back for most of it. It's easy to get bees to grow that are healthy. It's easy for all that stuff. Summer is all about maintenance, requeening, treating, balancing things out. The little hives getting a boost as long as they're healthy, balancing that and prepping for fall. And fall is all about prepping for winter. It's hard to make little colonies do good if you start them in a bad time of the year. All right. I have missed some things. All right. So TB, thank you so much. Um, you've been able to successfully graft your own queens and kill mites and provide good nutrition. Hey, that's awesome. And if you keep doing it, you're going to get better at all three of those things. And when you master, whether you master or you find that unique source that I've not really been able to find for queens, and you control mites and have good nutrition, you're going to have to fall into the fourth secret key, which is swarm control, because your bees are going to be powerful. And that one is tricky. I'm still working on trying to perfect that. But what I've come to realize, talking to Bob and Ian, a lot of these guys that have more experience and more hives, swarming happens. There are things that we can do to prevent a lot of it. And I do prevent the majority of it, but swarming just happens. And so don't feel bad when you lose a swarm. Sometimes it really frustrates me. And but when I hear about Bob losing a big swarm, it kind of makes my day. I know Bob hates it, but it makes me feel a lot better. Sorry, Bob. And Rodrigo, thank you very much as well. Hope that this new venture in beekeeping does very well for you in Portugal, and helps your family tradition keep on going. It's a great family tradition. And I hope I'm the first one in my family to do beekeeping that I know of. And I'm hoping that it'll outlive me. They don't have to be full-time beekeepers, but maybe just keep a few hives in the backyard. Hey, Ed Frills, we'll see you later, man. When will we be able to register for the January 7th and 8th conference? I don't know the exact date, but we're working on it. We're going to try to have it in June, no later than July. And I will make that available. I will talk about it on a live chat, and I will make sure that you all know. We probably won't be able to have more than 400 odd people there, just because that's the only place that we could book of size in the time frame that we have. We are working on getting somewhere bigger for the next year. That is going to be better all the way around, but I have a feeling that that's all going to go very quickly. So just keep that in mind. But yes, we're going to try to have it automated. I'm going to pay somebody to manage that. So if you guys sign up, they have someone over there that can take the time to respond back to you, say, yes, you are reserved, your book. Here's your information. You've got email confirmation. That's what killed us last year. And we did our best. And honestly, we started it like a month and 3 weeks before it actually happened. But that was what killed us. People signed up, and we couldn't keep up with all the emails and everything. So definitely going to get some help this year. Hey, Randy, thanks for stopping in, man. I hope that you have a great weekend as well. A good time with family. And thanks. We look forward to seeing you in January too, Randy. You better not skip out on us, and see if you can haul Ed up here too while you're at it. I don't think we'll destroy the building if all three of us are there at once. Let's see here. Best way to fix nectar, not honey-bound hive when you have no extra drawn comb. So I've heard of two ways of this being dealt with, and I'm not sure either one's really a great option, but it is an option. Well, if you have other hives, you can shake that nectar out. I've seen beekeepers do this in like mating colonies and nukes that had a great honey flow year, and they brought too much honey back in and were plugging it up. And you'll just shake the nectar. They were just shaking it onto the ground. It just kills me to see that. But if you have some good hives to have, that are drawing comb or have drawn comb, shake the nectar into there. If you don't, the other option would be to maybe temporarily freeze that, and then throw all that amount of bees onto foundations and encourage them to draw that out. But there's really not a whole lot of good fixes for this. Hey, Jared. Yeah, watching Bob is always good for your beekeeping. Bob's got so much experience, and he's a very kind individual in person and on film. I am going to talk to Laurel. I'm probably going to get Laurel one of those gambrels or whatever you call those things. She's been trying to get me to get her one for a while, and We need to get one. But Jared, I really do appreciate it. Hey, Sasquatch apiaries. Glenn, I hope you guys are doing good. I've seen you around a little bit, but I'm sorry I haven't been good about communicating on these live chats. It's always a last minute thing, and I need to do better about it. YouTube doesn't really give me a good way to communicate as far as like notifying everybody, because I'll do some posts about it when it's happening. It seems like half the people at least don't get it. And I guess the best way for me to do it is to have like a video and beforehand say, we're going to have a live chat on this date. And that does work pretty good. But I'm bad about sometimes remembering to do that and planning them out. I'll try to do better in the future. What about the synthetic bee comb? That is a possibility. Better Bee makes the better comb. And as long as it is wired in properly, the bees will use that. So that is a possibility. Frederick Dunn, who has some good YouTube videos, not just on the better comb, but other areas as well. And so does Dan Ski's Bees, has some videos on using the better comb with good success. And the queen will lay in it very good. Just whenever you melt it, make sure you don't sell it with your beeswax and melt it with your beeswax, but you can still burn it like a candle. Fantastic. Hat Bee Acres, is there a GoFundMe page for Laurel's gimbal? Her birthday is actually coming up in a couple days. But PayPal would probably be the best way. She kind of controls the PayPal and all that. Actually, she controls most everything around here. What am I saying? Anyways, yeah, PayPal or anything like that. If anyone wants to chip in a few bucks for Laurel to have a gimbal. For those of you who don't know what they are, they hold the camera and they make it way steadier. So it's easier to get nicer, cleaner shots. And we probably should have already got one by now, but we should already have probably a 4-wheel drive air conditioned truck by now too. But that's one of the reasons why I think we're still in business, is that we are growing slowly and as we can afford things. And I think that's wise. But anyways, Brian Reese says, I usually get the notification for the live chat 20 minutes after you have started. Really? That is so annoying. And the thing of it is, you've been on most every one by and large, and you watch a ton of the videos and comment on those. So you would think the algorithms would say, the live chat's going, Brian, watch it. It's in YouTube's best interest too, because they want people on their platform. But you know what? Technology is like that. It's finicky. Kamon without Laurel would be lost. Kamon without Laurel would be driving a semi truck, probably weighing 300 pounds. Because I'd be feeding myself, and that would not be very good. Let's see. Kamon, I have a couple highs with a medium on the bottom, and then a deep, and then another medium. I'm thinking it'll be easier on my back come time to do rotations. Hey, Aaron, I think that's a really good idea. A lot of commercial guys do that. They at least have one medium with a deep, called a story and a half, or some of them will have what you're doing, which is basically like just you don't really move the deep around a lot, as far as stick it on top or stick it at the bottom and have two, but you just rotate kind of like it's the center of the universe, and those mediums just kind of go around it. And I have never tried that, but I know some beekeepers who are very successful with that. And so I'm sure it'd be fine. But yeah, keep me posted on that. If you do that for a long period of time and you seem to like it, let me know what you think, advantages, disadvantages, all that stuff. Well, she does. She does a great job. There's so many things that she does that nobody ever sees. And it's really not fair, but it would take a long time for me to explain it all. And then she'd get embarrassed, and then she'd probably maybe get a little upset at me. So we don't want to go down that route. But she's awesome. The conference was by and large orchestrated by, I do a pretty good bit. Laurel's working on a lot of things for everybody. And, she's awesome. Hello, often have problem of my bees won't go through the queen excluder and start drawing out the honey supers. All right. Hey, Jeff. So If those are foundations, I keep shaking the table. If those are foundations, the bees take the excluder off. The bees are really terrible about drawing out the foundations through a honey excluder or a queen excluder, I should say. If you have drawn combs, I find my bees go to it just fine. They do a really good job. That's what I've done with my entire apiary, all of my apiaries, and it's done great. But if there's foundations, you need to take that excluder off. They don't want to go up there and draw those foundations. So my recommendation is get them to start drawing first. Wait till they've drawn 2 or 3 combs. Even if you get a little bit of brood in there, that's okay. One little bit of brood's not going to hurt them. And then once they've started that drawing, just shake all those bees down, then put your excluder on. And now that they've got those combs up there, they're going to continue to use those. What camera do you use to shoot the videos? We right now use a Canon M50. Yeah, Canon M50. And it does a good job for the price. One of these days, we'll get something that's a little bit better and gets a little bit higher quality. But for what we spent for it, it does a really good job. And it has a Rode shotgun mic on it. It does a really good job. There'll be some days where it's darn windy and you guys really have no idea unless you can see it, some trees or something like that. On days where it's just been all through the video, all you can hear is the sultry sound of my voice and the little giggles in the background making fun of me. I just got some giggles out of that. Probably the making fun of me part, though. Let's see here. After reversing the brood box with the super, how soon after do you put the brood box back on the bottom? Oh, goodness. I wouldn't know for that, but I would imagine if we're thinking about it, so if the queen moves up immediately, it's going to take her a while to lay that up. Let's say she's laying 1,500 eggs a day. Then I would say you want to come back probably 10 days later and then check and see how they're doing. There's a lot of variables there. How many of those combs have bee bread or honey? If you're giving them a complete empty box, and that can last for quite a bit. And queens will drop down, especially if they're in a medium. It doesn't give them a whole lot of room, and they'll drop down into that deep. What I see a lot of times with my doubles is that some queens are wonderful about dropping down into the bottom box, but some of them aren't. I think there's some of it has to do with the queen, but I think some of it has to do with the condition of the cluster at that given moment. And the problem is the ones that are dropping down, they're getting that queen to lay, and that's great. But the ones that get bottlenecked up top for whatever reason, conditions, if all of a sudden an influx of nectar comes in or a strong pollen flow and that plugs it up, and they just don't get down there, you don't get that brood chamber up on top, and she moves up into there, they swarm a lot faster than they should if you'd have rotated the boxes. So you kind of have to take the colonies on a per hive basis. What's your thoughts on single brood management for honey production? I love it. I've got a ton of colonies with a single brood management right now. I just released a video on that. I'm using our new lifter, and I have bee yards that are just nothing. Every colony in the yard single brood management. I have one yard that I was just at a couple days ago, right before it rained, and they all have. It's nothing but honey production colonies. Probably about 4 or 5 supers on each one being a deep, 3 to 4 mediums as well, and all single brood. You drop down below and you just see these gorgeous patterns. Once they commit to it, it's great. But those early periods, you have to have drawn comb. That really helps. But it works wonderfully. It's a great system. Ian's got some great videos on it. I like it quite a bit. But you've got to pull the bees back at the right time. And you also have to have that drawn comb, and then come back after you set them up 5 or so days later and check real quick and make sure they're not swarming, and maybe do it one more time afterwards. 5 more days. You can't wait a whole week. They might cap some swarm cells. 5 days. But once they commit to that single brood management, as long as they don't run out of room to put that honey above, It works wonderfully, and I really like it. We're going to have some videos upcoming soon on us pulling honey from these colonies and some pretty cool videos on what we're going to do after to eliminate mites and get us some more value with our bee equipment. And I'm not going to say much more than that or I'll spoil the surprise. Load your video blowing up the nuke. Hey, thanks, Scott. That really was the plan, was not to completely eliminate the nuke off the face of the earth. We nuked the nuke, and it was supposed to, the lid was not down at all. I was hoping the bulk majority of the force would just blow that lid off like crazy. We get a lot of smoke. Maybe a couple of the boards loose and have to re-screw it back in. No, sirree, that box was all over the farm. But at least it was. I bought that plywood back before it was, back when you could build a nuke for. So that, wait a minute, I think that was the nuke that I built. I did the video where I said how to build a nuke box for $4, and you could back in those days. It didn't include the lid, but I think I was getting CDX for $24 a sheet when I did that video a year and a half or so ago. Now you buy a nuke box, you build a nuke box like that, and it costs a lot more, but still, I don't like seeing it blow all over the place. Hey, Kamon, where do you buy the tent plugs for your hive covers? And also they work for the bucket feeders. I get those from, well, I'm going to actually write it down here in the comments. So I will give you the website. Oh, goodness. Yeah, there it is. Image. Oh, wait, it's not an email. .com. Okay, I believe this will work right here. So it's naturesimagefarm.com. If you click that, it should actually have it, I think, on the homepage. And then you can see those tent plugs. Sorry to hear that about your grandma, the little good doctor. Have you noticed the difference between foamies versus a traditional inner cover? I have. Well, first of all, they glue the foamies down a little bit more versus an inner cover. And well, the foamies are cheaper. I also think they do a better job of sealing around them. So if you're wanting a seal, I think the foamies do better. However, they get glued down more. The problem with both of those is that ants and stuff can build up on top of them. I don't like that at all. I hate having ants on top because they get on me and they really tick me off. But they work. They both work really good. The foamies aren't perfect. That's why I don't have inner covers on my hives, but I thought I'd try them out. They're not that expensive, and I thought would be a good thing to do. I love them. In certain circumstances, I like the foamies, but I'm thinking I may just use them for going into winter and coming out of it, and then take them off. I don't know. Still thinking about it. You should do a vid of taking the supplies to your other bee yards. And I should. I wish I could take more videos. There's so many things that I do that I'm like, man, I wish I could do a video. But where it gets tricky is, Laurel's homeschooling the kids. There's a lot of work that she's got to do that's not always with me. So many times to the bee yards, I'm by myself. Not always. There's many times that she's with me. And sometimes those days just we're both so wore out, we have no desire to be in the bee yard any longer than we have to, especially on these really hot days. So we're going to try to get some more. We're going to definitely have some more professional type videos coming up on honey removal, what we do to the colonies afterwards, taking those single brood management colonies, what do we do next with them. I'm going to try to do some good, thorough videos on that to help people out. I think it'd be really good stuff. The tent plugs are actually TINT, so it's like tent. It's the plugs they have on the 5-gallon buckets of paint, and they use that for the tinting the paint and all that kind of stuff. You can see the underneath the bucket and pull it out, just pop them right on out, and you can use them to feed sugar syrup to your bees through a bucket feeder. And if you watch the video where I just released it, probably 2 videos ago, on drawing the wax foundation, the experimental yard, you can kind of see the tent plugs that are used in the lid. But they're pretty cheap, and you can make your own bucket feeders really easily. Let's see. Kamon, new beekeeper here. Do you regularly put new frames into your hives to increase your inventory of hive frames? Absolutely. And that's one video that I wanted to shoot the other day. I was in that yard, that honey production yard, and in between these older honey combs that they're putting honey in, I'm dropping in frames of foundation and getting them to draw those out because I want more combs. And it's a great way to do it. You might as well do it. Do you lose a little bit of honey production? Maybe a little bit, but it's totally worth it. Combs are king. I love combs, and especially the new ones. You can't have too many combs. I don't think so, especially starting out. But yes, so what we're doing is, like, if we typically run 9 combs in a honey super. So what I'll do is, if I have the time, and this is what I have had some time this year to do this, especially in that particular yard of 30 honey production colonies in a nice location, take one frame out and I'll push the other 4 to the side and put 2 frames of foundation in the middle. And then I will come back a couple weeks later to all of those colonies when I'm already needing to do an inspection anyways or something. Make sure they have plenty of supers, make sure they're not trying to swarm, all that stuff. And then they'll have drawn those a good bit of the way out. And I'll leave one of them in there, and then I'll take one out of each of those. Whichever one's least drawn is the one I'll take. So I'll space them back to 9 so they fatten them up so it's easy to uncap them. And then I'll take the one out. And so, if I have 3 boxes on 30 colonies, that's 90 frames that I'm going to take. And that's 90 frames that I leave in there. And out of those 90 frames that I take, I can use those in several ways. A lot of the times they're not completely drawn. Maybe they're just partially drawn. But I can stick those in boxes of foundation and use those already started ones to entice bees to draw a full box of foundation much easier. Or I can just put them all together and have a super of brand new combs. Either way, combs. They're awesome. You need a bunch of them. I love it. Let's see. $75 for a sheet of CDX 4x8. Insanity. Well, I appreciate you saying that about we would love any video, even if you're just holding the phone and showing us what you're doing. Doesn't have to be professional. We like it off the cuff. Well, I may just try to do that then. I have to keep my phone clean. That's the main thing. Laurel just cleaned it for me, but you're right. And I kind of sometimes overthink things. And this is something that, I struggle with, is that I don't focus on you all enough. And sometimes, and I apologize, I listen too much. It's stupid. This is the way our brains work, though. We can get 100 nice comments and one person says something rotten, and we think more about that than we do the other 99 or 100 nice comments. Isn't that stupid? I've gotten better about it. But, I try to keep things. I have this like standard in the back of my mind that I feel like I have to uphold and then try to make it better. And sometimes, off the cuff is better. I'll try to do better about that. Because sometimes there's some really cool stuff in the bee yard that's happening. And sometimes Laurel's just not available, or we forgot to bring the camera or something like that. The best way I deal with ant problems, J&B home living, is just to take the darn inner covers away. Of course, you can't have a telescoping lid and do that, because then you can't hardly get it off once they glue it down, but you have to pry it, and it's a pain. But I really don't have any ant problems in the colonies. I don't have a foamy or an inner cover on them. I just don't. But as soon as I throw those inner covers or something on, the bees can't get there and guard, and there will be ants up there between the lid and the inner cover every time. I hate it. Let's see here. Let's see. Hey, Aaron. Well, thanks for stepping in tonight. I appreciate it very much. Whew, man. Yeah, it almost is cheaper to buy than to build. Prices will go back down, but maybe you can find an Amish person near you or a Mennonite. Those guys a lot of times have good prices, and their prices aren't affected by oftentimes by what's the crazy global stuff that's happening around us, or the stuff around the country. You look at the Amish prices, and they've gone up a tiny bit, but not the same. You can still get cheap boxes from the Amish. And thankfully, they don't watch my videos, so they don't hear about how I think their prices are really cheap, and so they don't raise the prices a lot. If they're watching this video, then they I don't know what their mom would say about that. Would you say dearth is a good time to build comb for honey supers? It's actually a really hard time to build comb for honey supers once you're into it a good way. You can build some comb during a dearth. And let me rephrase this. It depends. There can be a partial dearth, and it depends on what we're talking about. A dearth of nectar, a dearth of pollen. If there's plenty of diverse pollens coming in, you can draw comb as long as you're feeding them sugar syrup, because they're wanting to brood. They dictate how much brood they're going to rear, primarily based off of the pollens, but also some of the nectar. But if you're feeding sugar syrup, then that meets that requirement. And some of you might not like this. I know several people in my videos don't like this, but it is the truth. Sugar syrup, as far as what it does for our bees, it's closer to nectar than pollen supplement is to pollen. There's not as big of a gap between when we feed sugar syrup to bees. It really does a good job filling in the space for nectar. Is it as good? No, but the gap is not that huge. The gap between pollen supplements and healthy pollens is massive. We're not even close to having a supplement that matches what pollen will do. So if you have a dearth of nectar but have plenty of good pollens, just feed them sugar syrup. Absolutely get them to draw those combs out. Do it. But for us, we don't have those diverse pollens, so we can get some drawn. I say we can draw combs pretty good until about July. And we can draw a little bit afterwards, but it gets really hard, because as soon as those diverse pollens start nose diving, which is usually here around the last part of May in a early season, or like this one where it's a late one, will probably be about the 10th or 14th of June. That when those pollens start going down, so does the bee population. And as the population goes down, so does the potential for comb drawing. And if we feed them a lot and encourage big populations, then they're burning through their resources. So there's a balance there. You'll have to look at your area and see what you can get. Let's see. Off the cuff video. How do you keep the bees from plugging out the brood box? Keep a good queen in there. It's really hard. A good queen will put a lot of pressure on the bees to clear that space and draw comb. If they don't, and if you have drawn comb, then you're even better off. But where people have problems with plugging of the brood nest is almost always a queen related issue. Either the queen's poor, or two, she swarmed, and then maybe you introduced a new queen, you purchased one, but it's too late. They've already got the brood nest plugged, and you're in a tight spot. That's why, again, drawn combs are king. And that's why we've been talking about drawn combs for the last little bit, because, man, they're so handy. So handy. Let's see here. Oh, my goodness. I waxed plastic foundation, put a mix of starter strips, wax, and plastic foundation. The bees are chewing the wax off, and oh man, DP, don't leave us hanging, man. Ah, they did swarm. Ah, see, and I've had some issues with that too, David. I don't know how many swarms I've lost this year, but when they swarm like that, especially if it's during a period right before a strong nectar flow, because here's the thing: when colonies go queenless, they produce typically more honey per bee because they graduate faster. If there's a lot of brood to manage, that they stay nurse bees the appropriate amount of time and they have to manage all that. Plus, they have to warm that. So if you have cool nights or cool mornings, more bees have to stay home until it warms up all the way to guard that. So if you don't have as much brood, they're going to produce a lot more. So that's a problem. Is you lose that queen through that swarm, and then you end up with a lot of forager bees. And then since you don't have the pheromones of all that brood down in that brood nest and the queen laying to push all that to the side, they just throw it anywhere. And a lot of times it's in the first box right there. They come into and deposit it, and it plugs that brood nest up. It is a pain. And the only solution I have ever found that actually makes a whole lot of sense is to have a lot of drawn combs. And when you're new, don't have a lot of stores of drawn combs, it is just really hard. Glenn Copeland, will you have queens for sale this year? He asks. I don't know how many. I have been selling some. I've got a few hundred in the process right now, but I plan on using those for myself. If I can find the time, I will. But I say this every year. I want to try to do more, and I just can't. Between Laurel and I, we just don't have the time to raise hundreds of queens extras for everybody. And it kills me because I know I could sell every bit of them too. I need to get an employee, but we're just not quite there yet. I have the resources. If I have the equipment, I have everything I need to raise easily 1,000 more queens than I have right now, and more than that even. But just I don't have the time. I just don't. We're fixing to pull off tons of honey and extract it. And we're making splits. We're making queens for ourselves right now. I just dipped a bunch of equipment for expansion. We may be selling off some more bees, though. I might sell some singles off this year. Have quite a few bees. Bees are looking good. Do you use an upper entrance for the supers? Not really. I've toyed around with that over the years, and I really haven't noticed a monstrous difference in the ones that I did and the ones that I didn't. Doesn't mean that it doesn't make a difference. I just haven't. The eye test hasn't given me a whole lot of reason to do it. Let's see. Man, my voice is starting to go. Put that boy Jimmy to work. I hear he'll work for ice cream. He will, but his attention span's like that of a goldfish right now. He's 5. But he's a good little buddy to beekeep with. But yeah, we're gonna work on that in the future. We've got some good queens. I think a lot of people would like them. I know I do. That's the problem, though, is even if I produced 500 queens, that wouldn't be enough to meet the demand. And then if I produced 1,000, that wouldn't be either. There's not a whole lot of good queen producers out there. These big guys, I know a few of the big commercial operations, and it's just all quantity and no quality by and large. I saw a YouTube video that moonshine, apple cider vinegar, and garlic has 100% mite kill. Any thoughts? I've talked about this for quite a while on this live chat and other live chats that, these crazy people on YouTube, you can't watch their channels. You can't do it. These weird concoctions that they throw together, you got to watch them. That that was the weirdest thing. That wasn't really premeditated. Dustin and I had pulled like 20 hours of wax dipping and assembling of two-way pallets, 100, like 30 something two-way pallets, 100 deep boxes, wax dipped them. 50 nukes from Hat Bee Acres and lids. And we did a bunch of other work and prepped those for expansion. And we were just kicking butt and taking names, but we were working the shed with wax dipping, and the shed was already about 100 degrees in the sun. And the wax dipping, we were just murdered us. And Dustin's like, "Hey, I've got some of this stuff." And you got to know Dustin. He's crazier than I am. I like hanging around guys like Dustin, though. It makes me feel normal. And we just kind of threw it together, and all of it really wasn't scripted that much. We just kind of like, hey, let's just kind of, this is this and that, and we'll just see what happens. And it actually worked out pretty good. Let me tell you, I've got some interesting comments. Most people have got a good chuckle out of it, and that's what it was meant for, is just to have a good laugh. But some people have really got their rear ends chapped over it. So, oh well, there's always somebody in the crowd that doesn't like to laugh. No bees were harmed in the making of that film. But one of the funny things is we had a bee, because bees will go around, and that box had been used one time before, so it had some propolis on the inside, and there was a bee flying around trying to get in the entrance to fly in there and get some propolis. And I'm just like, get out of here, girl. Come on. You don't want to go into this hive. You don't want to. So let's hear this, Jeremy Lindsay. So I know this isn't probably quite the same for you, but so he says, I've struggled with pollen bound frames, and because I'm in my third year beekeeping, I'm still building up my drawn out frame stock. What do I do with all the pollen bound frames? I don't know. I can't remember exactly where you live, Jeremy. I think you're in Tennessee. Are you in Tennessee? But we get that dearth period in summer, so if you can, yank those out, stick them in the freezer, and just hang on to them. If you can get them to draw out some other combs, that's great. If not, then it's kind of rough. I don't know what else to do. But if you can get them to draw them out, yank those, stick them in the freezer, feed them back in the summer during the dearth period. It'll make a good difference. But okay, some guys in Hawaii, because their seasons just go and go and go, pollen bound is a monstrous problem in certain parts of the island. They literally destroy young combs because there's no good way to get the pollen out of them. They literally take them and they just power wash them out down almost to the foundation, so that the bees will haul out what's left of them, and they soak them and ruin the bee bread. And there's multiple different methods they have over there of trying to eliminate the excess pollen, because the bees just get so much and they keep getting more in, they don't use it all. Could you imagine that problem? I'm just like, why can I not have some great pollen coming in July? And these guys are chucking it away like it's garbage. It's amazing how we all have different problems in our areas. But yeah, they're chucking young combs, but they can draw foundation there in some places on the Big Island almost year round. Isn't that crazy? There are certain parts on the Big Island where they have dearths most of the year too, the desert part of it. So that's what I would do, Jeremy, though. Mm-mm. Oh yeah, there's always room for humor in beekeeping and anywhere. You've got to. If you don't laugh, life is just not worth living to me. And turn off the news, for Pete's sake. That'll take 10 years off of your life. I tell you what, they drive me nuts. I think all they do anymore is live to scare people. And I'm not talking about coronavirus stuff. I was talking about like the gas, the pipeline thing, and yeah, stuff happens. It does, but it always is going to happen. There's always going to be something happen. But don't encourage the sheep to stampede, for Pete's sake. But that's what they make their money doing. Do you have a video on making escape boards? Thinking of trying them this year for honey harvest. I am actually working on one of those, Brian. I have 50 of them, and they are going on, and we're going to be doing videos on that. Now, Bob Benny has some videos on those, but I don't know. I'm hoping to have mine a little bit more detailed, as far as this is what the hive looked beforehand and afterwards. But his are still really good. And he's got some on using escapes. And I'm going to be using the Man Lake escapes, and we'll see how well they work. In the past, I've used fume boards. But see, this is the problem. We've bottlenecked our information in beekeeping, primarily because we haven't used communication devices like this, or we just didn't have them in the past. I have been told for 18 years, most of it, you cannot use escapes in Tennessee. If you do, small hive beetles will get in there before you can get to it and destroy your honey. I never wanted to take the risk, and especially in my early years in beekeeping, I was extremely impressionable because these people obviously know more than I do. Well, some of those people didn't know what they were talking about. And that's where you have to be careful. And Bob's like, "Oh yeah, we do it down here." I'm like, "Well, he's got small hive beetles down there in Georgia." Hmm. If so, I tried it out, and I'm not sure yet if we're going to go over that method over using the fume board. I like to use Honey Bandit with the fume boards, but neither one of these methods, escapes or the fume board, eliminate 100% of getting all the bees out of the honey supers. But they do a very good job of getting 95+%. And then that's where you have a bee blower to come back through and just blow the rest of them out. And some people think that's brutal on the bees, but as long as they land on grass or something like that, they're just fine. It doesn't hurt them. They're just like, what the heck happened? Had a tornado go through the hive? But it's a whole lot better than crushing them or taking them back to the extraction yard and then being all confused. Hey, Glenn. Wow. Thank you so much again. I'll put that towards Laurel's gimbal. She really wants one. But thank you so much, Glenn. And God bless you guys. Hope you have a good holiday weekend. Yeah, Hawaii can keep it. We get a break in Tennessee. Well, I've got several buddies like, man, you need to come to Hawaii, beekeep here full time. But I don't think I like beekeeping full time. I think the winter season is part of what makes the beekeeping special for me is that absence. It's like gardening, At the end of the season, you're just like, oh, I can't weed anymore. With beekeeping, that's the way I feel towards. Usually, I get a burnout, especially back when I was truck driving full time. So I think maybe this year the burnout won't be so bad. But when I was truck driving full time and beekeeping with about 200 hives, man, I'm telling you, the burnout towards August and early September was catastrophic. And there's just days that I just couldn't. I needed to get out there, and I just couldn't hardly make myself do it. But then there's January, and then it's almost like, oh my goodness, when is it going to warm up and I can get to these bees? And then by the time it is time to get to those bees, I am chomping at the bit, ready to go. And I just can't imagine being in Hawaii where it's just 365 days of the year. Too much for me. I use escapes and blow the fume and blow the rest of the leftovers in Texas. Plenty of hive beetles. Awesome to hear from you, Silver Gorilla, on that as well. But the problem with a lot of our education system, it's not that people mean anything bad, but a lot of these guys that you hear this information like, don't use escapes. We have small hive beetles. It won't work. The guy that taught me that, he was well respected and still is well respected in this state. However, he's a terrible beekeeper. I didn't know that at the time, but I'm not going to say who he is, but he's well known in the state. And a lot of people think because of his rank that he is someone to always listen to. He's been wrong several times. He also doesn't think you should ever feed pollen patties in this state because small hive beetles will take over the colony. Apparently, I'm killing a lot of my colonies. But getting to hear from guys who actually do it for a living, that's why I push guys like Bob Benny. If you haven't watched his channel, do it. Do yourself a favor. Ian, he's rough around the edges, especially for a Canadian. He's not very Canadian, is he? Canadians are supposed to be nice and caring and gentle. Ian's not any of those things. I know Ian's a great guy. I like Ian. But seriously, though, these professionals, their family goes without if they don't keep their bees healthy and thriving. They're not going to do something dumb. Try not to, anyways. I think you can learn a lot, even as hobby beekeepers, from these guys. Oh, Ian is on. Oh, yes. You should have heard the giggle we got from Laurel when she saw your comment, Ian. Well, maybe you shouldn't be the average Canadian, Ian, because then you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. Ian's just a good old country boy. He's just a little too far north, is all. I actually filmed a video recently, and I didn't publish it because Laurel wasn't there to film it. The quality was really low, but I said something to you, Ian, and in my next blooper reel, it is totally going to make it. It is so funny. Hey, Garrett B Company, thank you so much for donating again. I have been very, very, very busy, but I'm sure you are as well with all those bees. Going to catch up and watch your videos soon. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it. If you haven't watched me controlling those mites in the last video, Garrett, you ought to see it. It really is the best way to control. I had a couple people suggest that I have a control group, though, because only doing one hive for the video wasn't very scientific. So they wanted to see if I did 10 of them. That's what one person suggested. He's like, you only did one. You need to do this on 10 hives and see if all the hives will actually respond the same. Yeah, busted. That's exactly right. Jeremy Lindsay. That's right. Dandridge. You're over in Dandridge. But yeah, that's what I would do with the bee bread, Jeremy. I know it's not a great, way to deal with it, but there's still time to draw some combs, and yeah, maybe that would work for you. Ian's like, I just tune in and I hear that I'm not a typical Canadian. Ha ha ha. Well, I'm not a typical 32-year-old either, but being normal is way overrated. Way overrated. Some days, there are those days, though. I kind of wish I was a little more normal. Let me tell you. I think Laurel wishes I was a little bit more normal sometimes. How's the Epime test going? All the experimental yards going really good. Definitely more videos on the way. I have several videos I need to upload. But the Epimes are doing great. I can't really say at this point if they're doing better than the wooden hives, but they're definitely doing just as good. And I've been really pleased with the pollen production off of the bottom boards that I've been getting. I've got a video. I actually finally have it. I know I've been promising this for almost 2 months now, but I have a video coming up on the Epime pollen traps and also a discount code. I'll go ahead and give that to you all now. If any of you are wanting a pollen trap from Epime, it'll give you 10% off the pollen trap. It is POLLEN, then 10, as in the number 10, not spelled out in a word. So I'm just going to write that down here. They said to me, so here's the code down below. If you have purchased one in the last 30 days, you can message them and they will reimburse you the 10%. I really like the pollen trap. If you're looking into pollen traps, I think it's a great way to go. If you keep telling bad jokes, you will never come close up to normal. Well, my jokes aren't bad. See, that's where, again, I mean, you're weirdy, and my jokes are gold, comedy gold. Like that video the other day, it was a bomb. Or no, it wasn't a bomb. That means bad, I think. Da bomb. That's what it was. Da bomb. I'm not very good on all this cool stuff. It was funny when Natalie, that 13-year-old girl, was here visiting. And doing the videos with me, she was teaching me not all the stuff, but basically what the new words like cool and awesome, kids don't say that stuff anymore. That's so old. Now it's other stuff. And I'm just like, and they're giving me these words. I'm like, that's not cool. I know what cool is. Cool is cool. And she's just like, no, you're old. You're old. I'm just like, man, I'm old. But anyways, Kamon, how do you go about contacting the state to inspect your operation? Do they do it once a season? I asked the CZ. The state seems to be a black hole getting a hold of anyone. So I'm guessing it's Connecticut because I think that's where you said you were from earlier. I don't know what it's like there in Connecticut, but if it's anything it's like here in Tennessee, it's like pulling the tooth out of a bear to try to get the state to do anything around here. They want you to jump through all the hoops and follow all the rules, and yet it's a pain to do anything. Talk about this for a while. But anyways, I know that they're understaffed. They don't have maybe enough personnel to make it happen, but then don't make so many rules. Cayman is normal. It's the rest of us that's messed up. Don, be thankful that there's not a lot of caimans in the world, because Kamon with the wrong type of mom would be in jail or doing some crazy crime, I think. I think he would. Mom kept me on the straight and narrow. Mama tried over here and it actually worked. It wasn't like the Johnny Cash song where Mama tried and it didn't work out. Well, Daniel Griff, like, you're not old. 32 as a pup. Well, see, old is relative. And I don't think I'm old at all. Shoot, there's days I'm like, I don't even think I'm 32. I'm sure that it feels the same way when you're 60 or 70. However, to a 13-year-old girl, she looks at me like I'm a full grown man. I guess I am at 5'6". But she, Natalie thinks I'm pretty cool, and she gets embarrassed sometimes around me, like shy, that kind of thing, really. And I keep telling them, like, what, don't treat me like that. I'm just as normal as anybody else. But it's nice of her, I guess, to treat me like an adult. I don't deserve it. Oh no, Natalie's on here now. Oh my goodness. See, this is what happens when you talk. You open your mouth and you insert your foot. Your mom did pretty good, but Laurel streamlined you. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Laurel's sitting on the back of the couch watching TV with a glass of wine. Huh? Now she's too busy right now being the eye in the sky, like watchtower, watching over your comments and mostly watching over mine. I'm probably fixing to get yanked off of here in a second. Merle Haggard. Oops. I guess I'm not old enough to be where I need to be on that kind of stuff. So Jeremy Lindsay, the little ladies are drawing out comb, and the hives I've had issues with did go queenless, which explains the pollen being packed into the brood frames. Yeah, and the queenless hives, it's just a rough situation, that comb, because man, you don't have the brood pheromones in the lane to keep it pushed out to the side. They're also not raising a lot of broods, so they're still bringing in the pollen, but it's not getting used up at the same rate. And then between that and the nectar, oh, Laurel's giving me the look. Oh no. Yeah, came and you inserted both feet. Hey, Laurel's told me I've done that quite a bit, but yeah, beekeeping like a girl. Sheesh. So let's see. What was the last one you said? Oh yeah, that's the cool thing to say right now. So instead of saying cool, it's like, that was so fire. What the heck does that mean? Maybe it's just I'm old. It doesn't make as much sense as cool. That was so fire. Cool sounds cool. Fire sounds like I'm fixing to blow up a beehive or something like that, or shoot a gun. Fire! But firing a gun is cool. So I guess that could work. Anyways, I'm not a teenager anymore. I actually was never cool. If you want to know a secret about me, I never had any friends my age. Never. Until I got to be around 20, I really didn't have any friends my age, because I was too busy. I was pretty intense as a kid, too. Imagine having a mouth like this and being pretty ambitious and competitive and no restraint. Yeah, kids didn't like me. And also, I was really interested in farming and bees in my teens. So, it involves sweating and getting stung. So, and hoeing weeds and all that kind of stuff. So, not a lot of friends. Not my age. But, anyways, Laurel's looking at me and she's like, Laurel's pointing at me right now. She said, you said, you all have wives. You know what I'm talking about. And if there's women on here listening, please forgive me. We all know that you're probably right anyways, but oh, now she's giving me the other look. First of all, you said an hour and a half. Oh, you said an hour and 15. An hour and 15. And now she's over there going, I'm not talking to you like that. You said an hour and 15 minutes. So now I feel guilty. I do. And I've got to let you guys go. You know how this works. Laurel's pulling the plug. Laurel says, I love you enough to let you go an extra hour and 15 minutes. So is she saying that to me or to you all? Anyways, guys and gals, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun live chat. I've been embarrassed multiple times tonight. Ian showed up at a really inopportune moment for myself, or maybe it was a funny moment for everybody. It's always a blast. I hope your bees are doing well, and I'm sorry that several of you are having some issues. I hope that you can get past them, but just realize that it's not just you. When it comes to backfilling of brood nests or having issues with drawing foundation, comb-related issues are super common starting out. It is one of the biggest problems. It's like varroa, and there's queen issues, and with the queen issues come the backfilling of the brood nest during nectar and pollen flows. Just realize it's not you. We all deal with it, but hopefully the videos that I have coming up soon might help you with some of those comb issues, and I think it will. Pretty excited about some upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.